Ah, crap. A little technical difficulty at the beginning of that, but hello to all you magic makers and welcome to Touch of Magick. I am Marissa DiAradia, aka Sin City Witch, and our topic tonight is paranormal investigation. Our guest tonight is Heather Leigh Carroll-Landon, PhD. She's a certified paranormal investigator, researcher, author, certified EVP technician. She's also the founder of Exploration Paranormal, and her main goal in the field is to help educate others and help those experiencing paranormal activity get answers. And that's what I think most people would want. She's also a practitioner of various forms of herbal and crystal magic. And she says this has helped her empower her and helped her protect others from paranormal entities. Hey, Heather, welcome
Hey.
to Touch of Magick again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we know everybody loves this topic, so I'm super excited to talk to you today. You've been on before, and it was a great conversation, and I know we're going to have another great conversation tonight. So the first thing I want to talk about is Heather has written a book that is due to be released in August of this year, if I got it right.
August 22nd.
All right, tell us a little bit about this book.
Well, essentially the idea came while we were filming Real Hunts Ghost Towns with motion picture video, which was released last year on Tubi. And we did tours and investigations in a whole bunch of different Southern Nevada ghost towns. And I had talked to History Press about the documentary and the research I had done. And they had said, well, why don't you just throw it into book format and we'll publish it. So it kind of all developed. It was a real easy process, a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah. So, I mean, Nevada's got quite a haunted history that maybe a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah, exactly. Everything from the Wild West to just the devastation that happened in those mines when they either collapsed or, the lawlessness. Because like Nelson, the sheriff was 2 hours away and he only went if someone was shot. And even then he didn't even go.
Wow. So only if somebody got shot, they would show up.
Right. And
Oh
even at that,
God.
they sometimes didn't even show up. So there was a lot of lack of authority in a lot of the towns in Nevada during that time.
Well, they called it the Wild West for a reason, right?
Exactly.
And Heather and I are actually working on a little project together. We launched it a little last year. She's been busy. I've been busy, but we're hoping to get it off the ground at some point. We've got the Facebook page up, Witches Paranormal Society. So we're going to try to get a website and an app together and see if we can bring together witches who want to investigate the paranormal. So that should be pretty exciting, right, Heather? I thought that was a fun idea.
Yes, and it's amazing. People don't realize that, but when it comes to witchcraft or any even occult practices, it all ties into the paranormal and can be used to help clients who need help.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're also working on a paranormal investigation 101 class, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And
almost
we're going
done with that.
All right. And we're going to launch that on imysticyou.com. And I will post about it on the various pages and that's going to be amazing. I'm going to even take the class because it sounds like it's going to be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to dig in a little bit and get to know your journey a little bit more and let the people out there get to know your journey a little bit more. So my first question for you is what made you start investigating the paranormal? What was it that brought you to this?
Essentially, I got interested in the paranormal over 30 years ago. Okay, I don't want to date myself, but yeah, we'll just leave it at over 30 years. And
Okay.
I had experiences as a teenager with my grandfather coming to see me. He would appear at the side of my bed, at the foot of my bed. I'd see him in the bathroom mirror. I'd see him walking down the hallway. And it just kind of struck me odd because back then there was really no information about paranormal activity. And what was out there was based on either it's a demon and I was like, how can my grandfather be a demon? Or it was also based on the fact that someone had to die in a location. And he was never a part of that house. We didn't buy that house until after he passed. So when my grandmother sold their house, she moved in with us and we bought this house after he had passed and we all moved in together. So it kind of struck me as odd. And I started continuing to like research the different things, books in the library on how paranormal activity occurs. And from there, I started having more and more experiences away from the home. Then I would say I kind of just sat back for a while. But then when I was in my early 20s in Gettysburg, I had a full-bodied apparition walk by me. He tipped his hat,
Wow.
full Confederate gear. It was over by Devil's Den. And I would say that entire weekend we were there, I must have had 20 experiences just from being in that town. Between being
Wow.
touched, equipment malfunctions, seeing things, hearing things. And it just kind of sparked more interest. And I had met an author up there. He also does the Haunted Gettysburg tours. And we got started talking, and it just kind of that launched everything else from there.
Wow. So you had your own paranormal experiences, and then it drove you forward into this whole world that you're involved with now.
Yep.
So you also practice magic, herbal
Mhm.
and crystal magic. What's it like to practice magic and be a paranormal investigator? And does that coincide with each other at all? Does it blend with your work?
Yeah, I personally feel it does because for the first of all, when you help a client or do paranormal research, if someone needs help, you want to help them with what their beliefs are. So of course, if they're Catholic, I'm not going to go in and, do one of my herbal rituals because it won't, if they don't believe in it, it's not really going to work. So you want to make sure you go in. And the problem is not, I don't want to say there's not many that follow herbal magic or any type like that, but there's not enough. So when you come across a case and they've either used a Ouija board or they're, I don't really like the term, but they're a baby witch and they're learning and they're experimenting, they can cause a whole bunch of activity to happen in their home. And that's where I come into play because you have these Catholic priests and all these other people who don't know how to handle cases like that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So in your practice, you feel it always works best if somebody is dealing with the spiritual practice that they're most comfortable with.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, that makes sense, right? Because that's where, our beliefs are based on our perceptions and our, how we're going to handle that. I guess that makes a lot of sense to me. So all right. So do you consider yourself a witch or just a practitioner of folk magic?
I really don't put a label on it. It's funny. We do joke around and laugh, and they call me a kitchen witch because I like to play around with stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
feel like I'm a combination of kitchen and green because I do like the herbs and stuff like that. But I've just never really put a label on it. I practice just what makes me comfortable in the moment.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair. And I think everybody's got to find their own way
Yeah.
and relate to what they relate to and the spiritual energy that they're tapped into. So if it works, keep working it. So,
Exactly.
something really cool about Heather is that one of the really cool things about Heather, because there's a lot of really cool things about Heather, but she's affiliated with the Warren Legacy Foundation. So
Mhm.
I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Ed and Lorraine Warren, but Heather, why don't you give people a little bit of background about Ed and Lorraine Warren, who they are, and the Legacy Foundation?
Okay, basically, if you haven't heard of Ed and Lorraine Warren, you've probably heard of the cases that they were on: Amityville, the Conjuring series, Annabelle. Those were all cases that they had worked on, and they were. I view them as pioneers in the field. I've always respected, even though I didn't always agree with how they handled cases. But we all have different, opinions on how we do things. But they were true pioneers, and they opened the doors for many more investigators to come through. And Lorraine Warren, with her grandson, Chris McKinnell, founded the foundation before she passed. And they decided it was a different branch from NESPR, which was the original New England Society of Psychic Research. And that just focused on New England. But Lorraine and Chris wanted to have a global community of investigators and researchers that wasn't non-denominational, because the NESPR followed the Catholic viewpoints and methods of conducting paranormal research. So we have an organization with, I want to say we're just getting close to 100 members now because we've had some reorganization within the foundation. lost, every organization experiences that. So we've lost several members, but we're rebuilding. And it's one of those things where we're nationwide, non-denominational. We have witches, Buddhists, Taoists, Catholic priests, Christian pastors. We have everything from psychiatrists to medical doctors, to journalists, you name it. It's interesting with how many people and how many different people we have in the foundation. And we're dedicated to helping people worldwide. And we're also dedicated to helping the next generation of paranormal researchers.
Very, very cool. And I think it's so interesting that they have evolved, because I know that they were really against any kind of magic and, and different ways of doing things. So it's great to know that there's, a more open understanding of spirituality in all its different forms, because I think it doesn't matter what your spiritual path is. You could be interested in the paranormal and, have a paranormal experience. Right.
Yeah. When I first applied to join a couple of years ago, I was nervous about that because I wasn't quite sure. But I knew I wanted to learn from the best, and I felt that the foundation was the best place to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ed and Lorraine Warren, all those controversial at times, are absolutely iconic in this field. So it's quite, you went right to the top, right? You went right to the top of the heap there.
I did.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about investigations. Okay. Because a lot of people are interested in investigations and investigating. So what types of equipment do you need to do an investigation? Are there any things that you think are super important that somebody have if they're going to investigate something on their own? There's a lot of amateur investigators. Maybe they want to try to investigate at their house or their Aunt Sally's house or wherever.
Well, first of all, unless you want to possibly open doors or invite a spirit into your home, I highly suggest not investigating at your house. Okay. If I get new equipment, like I had bought, we're still living in Vegas, but I had bought a spirit box, and I didn't even turn it on until we left the house and went to a park, because I didn't want anyone to get the idea that they were welcome in my home that didn't belong there. But that's just how I personally do it. Some people have no problem investigating their own home, and that's fine, as long as you know how to set boundaries and shut doors. When it comes to minimum equipment needed, I would highly suggest you definitely want a camera, or you could even, I don't like using your phone, but if you put it in airplane mode, you turn off any GPS locators, go ahead and use your phone to record video, take photos, use the digital voice recorder on it, so you don't have to go out and spend the money. But other than that, if you're going to use tools in an investigation, I would suggest definitely a digital thermometer, one of the laser ones, so that way you can check temperature. So if someone claims the temperature is dropping, you can verify that. There's also like the Eddy Plus is a good one, because that measures everything from vibrations to humidity to temperature and all of that. But other than that, I don't think you need any of those. I use non-tech tools. I use a fidget spinner. I use dowsing rods, pendulums, and I just basically sit. Most of the time when I go on investigations, you'll find me sitting in a corner just watching. And I just sit there and observe is what I do most of the time. So people say you need these high-tech tools, but you really don't, personally, but that's just my opinion.
Okay. So do you usually experience like perceptible manifestations, where that like something you can see with your own eyes? Or
yeah, I've had that several times. And so, getting it caught on camera is very difficult. I always joke, people think that these spirits don't know technology, but I truly think they do, because they never show up on camera.
Right.
So it's like, it makes you wonder if they really do know what's going on and know how to not be seen, like Bigfoot. How is it he's never spotted?
Right.
Type of thing. But most of the time I bring a pen and paper and I document what I see. And if you sit back and just watch, it's amazing if you open your eyes up to what you can see, even if it's just shadows moving. Or there was one investigation we were on, and it looked like the whole room turned into like the heat rising off the concrete on a hot day.
Wow.
It just had that waviness in the room.
Yeah.
interesting what you can find if you just take time to sit back and remove yourself from the situation and watch.
Yeah, as well, when we're so used to constant stimulation, when you quiet yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you really can tune into that psychic perception and
Yep.
really see things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So, what are the different types of spirits or energies that somebody might encounter in their home or in somebody else's home or that you would investigate?
Mm-hmm. Most of the time, you run across just, I would say it's, oh, shoot, why am I drawing a blank? The spirits are after me today. No, residual energy.
Okay.
I'm like, why am I drawing a blank? I know this,
Yeah.
but it's residual energy. So it's like an audio tape being, replayed. One example is, I know Chris from the Warren Foundation shared, it was a ghost. The couple would be sitting on the couch. They'd hear the footsteps come down the stairs, go into the kitchen. An air popper would start popping, but they didn't own an air popper. So just the
Oh,
sounds of this popcorn popper popping, and then you would hear footsteps going back up the stairs. So every night, this ghost came down and made popcorn and went back to bed. That was pretty much the residual energy of,
popcorn.
right, of a ghost that, or of
Yeah.
someone who used to live there and did that every day. It could also be just anything, like if you did something every day, such as gardening, eventually, you would leave an imprint. And there have been cases where that imprint, even if I were to move, the people who move into the house after me, if my imprint is strong enough, they would see what would look like my spirit, even though I would still be alive, going about my daily routine. So there's possibilities with that. Others are, you could have relatives coming in to visit and check on you, friends coming to check on you. It could be the spirit of someone who lived in the home prior to that. It could also be if you have any antiques or property that was owned by someone else, they could be checking on their property. And of course, you have the potential of demonic activity, but that is very, very rare.
Okay. So, how would you go about differentiating the different
It's
types
just
of
a
spirits?
matter of research. You have to go in, you have to get the history. We do extensive interviews with the clients to figure out what activity is happening, where it's happening. Does it occur at the same time? Does it occur on a full moon, but it doesn't occur on a new moon? We get all of that information. You also have to do research on the property. So find out who owned the house, if there was any, granted, it's not a reason for paranormal activity to be there, but we do look for any deaths that might have occurred on the property or any tragic events that could have left an imprint. And then you would go in and you just kind of investigate. You ask questions, try to get the spirit to interact with you. If you get that information, then it eventually it can take several investigations of the home and years of research before it all falls together to pinpoint exactly who might be there. But then sometimes you end up with the one spirit who, whether they're truthful or not, I don't know. But you get that one spirit that point blank says, "I'm here. This is me." But that's
Yeah.
just as rare as demonic activity.
Okay. So these are rare things.
Mhm.
So are most of the investigations that you go on, are these investigations fruitful, or is it sometimes just natural stuff? Are you actually finding paranormal activity, or are you finding that it's a space heater's making everybody a little spacey?
Most of the time on the investigations I've been, because we go in first looking for we want it to be natural because we don't want our clients to be suffering from paranormal activity. We don't
Right.
want their pain to be real. But it's so hard because they truly believe that they're being haunted by something paranormal. But when we go into a house, of course, you take EMF readings if you have an EMF detector, and you can calculate. Okay, like we had one person have a lot of paranormal activity only when she was sleeping, and like you said, she had a space heater next to her,
Okay.
and she was hallucinating, I guess you would say, from the high EMF fields. And
Right.
it can make you feel like that. And we always tell our clients, check your get a plumber in there if you're hearing noises in the wall. Get a general contractor in there just to check to see if everything's okay. Check the electrical to make sure nothing's off balance, or what they call it, the fear cage. And that's when so many high EMFs are in a small area that you just end up starting to get, sick.
Okay. Oh, well, that can happen, huh?
Yeah.
From all of that electromagnetic energy.
Yeah.
So, and I think that even radon can make people
Hmm.
feel like something's going on too, right? There's a lot
Exactly.
of that on the East Coast.
Hmm.
There's a lot of radon in basements and stuff like that. All right, so that's super interesting. And you said demonic manifestations are very rare. So I know a lot of people feel like, they've seen a lot of horror movies.
Hmm.
So that's a very rare occurrence, right?
Extremely rare. And the more research that we've been doing with the foundation, the more we're discovering that granted, you do still have these entities out there, but when someone feels that they have a demonic entity attached to them, it could also be self-manifested, meaning they truly believed it was a demon, like something made a knocking noise and all of a sudden they believe it's a demon, and next thing they know, they've actually manifested a demon in their home.
Wow.
Mhm.
So people are actually able to manifest that energy by their pure belief.
Yep. Yeah.
So how are you able to differentiate? So that just
It's difficult. It's one of those things where it takes you got to talk to the client, find out the history. And a lot of times, if you have, like, let's say they just have mild activity in the beginning and it
mhm.
suddenly gets worse, that's either them manifesting it themselves or they're feeding whatever entity is in their home.
So what's your position on possession?
It's there. It's possible. I've seen it happen. It's very
Okay.
scary.
Okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a demonic possession. It was an actual spirit possession because we were investigating a home
Wow.
and it was a very nasty spirit. It was the same. I don't know if you've heard me talk about it, but I've talked about the one client's house where I was physically attacked, where it just kind of flipped me in the air and threw me on the ground. It was the same case, and we believe it was the same entity. But our other lead investigator who was there, big guy, over 6 feet tall, and him and I work well together. We can actually, in pitch darkness, know where each other's at. We're just so in tune with each other when we investigate
Right.
that I could see him through the pitch darkness, and I can see his eyes just completely turn black. His eyes were darker than the rest of the room and the space around him.
Wow.
And it took probably, because I was counting in my head, I said, if I get to 30 and he still looks like this, I'm getting him out of here. And I was probably around 20 or 25, and he snapped out of it. And you could see him. He shook his head and he's like, holy crap, where am I? He completely lost track of time, major time slip, and he was just gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. So
Yeah.
what kind of protection, methods do you use before you go in? I
Mhm.
mean, I know as a witch what I would do,
Right.
for my beliefs and my
Mhm.
practice, right? And
Yeah.
so what would you, somebody who maybe isn't doing it that way, what would you be doing? Praying the rosary or something? Or, I mean,
Exactly. It's whatever you believe in that works. Like
right,
for me, I carry little sack of crystals and herbs that I carry in my pocket. I also tuck a few crystals in my bra. I I have a
right.
pentacle that I wear when I go somewhere. I also have a triquetra tattooed on my ankle, but they're all symbols that I believe will protect me. And
Okay.
so I've been on investigations where investigators have brought crosses, holy water, whatever they're comfortable in. And then some organizations will pray before going in, but I know sometimes that's hard when you have so many people of different beliefs.
Right,
And I
right.
also meditate before going in and envision the circle of light surrounding me. And then I actually envision bringing that light with me.
Okay. So is your belief that if somebody um all they have to do to protect themselves would be to just invoke whatever spiritual or religious practice that they have, and that's what's going to keep them safe?
For 99.9% of the time it will, because you're always going to have something, because spirits, not so much demons, that's not really my forte, but I do know a little bit of it from working with Chris. But spirits have free will. So you can yell at them to get out of your house all you want, but if they're a human spirit, they don't have to leave if they don't want to.
Wow.
They
Okay.
can
Yeah.
be just as stubborn as us. And I always call it the power of self-possession. And if you view it, I'm actually supposed to be doing some talks on this in the future at upcoming conventions. But if you look at it as a spirit, as if it's a bully, when you're back in school, when you stood up to a bully, 9 times out of 10, they back down. If you were confident in yourself, you were less, I'm not saying that you're fully protected, but you were less likely to get picked on by the bully. And I don't want to put the blame on the victims of bullies. It's just kind of how my best way to make the analogy is spirits are like bullies. They're going to go, either they're going to try to take out the strongest person in class to prove to them that they're stronger than they are, or they're going to go after the weakest ones.
Okay, and this is not all spirits. This is
No, not all spirits.
So if somebody was a jerk when they were alive, they might be a jerk when they're dead
they're going to be a jerk when they're dead.
There you go. Got it.
Right. So
okay,
so they're going to either try to take
people
out the strongest one or the weakest one, which is basically what the bullies in school did. And, so it's one of those, I tell people, just be fully confident in your abilities, be fully confident in what you bring to protect you. And that will put you in a better position to not be negatively affected by the spirit. But it doesn't guarantee it either, just like, the bully in the schoolyard.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of those energies feed on fear, and somebody was saying fear can open you up to spiritual attack in the chat, right? So yeah, a lot of energies will feed on fear or any high emotion, right? Isn't that what they believe poltergeist to be? Is a lot of emotion in one place? Or explain to me what that is.
What they've discovered is that it's basically almost like psychokinesis. And it's more common in teenagers who are going through puberty or dealing with emotional trauma or emotional issues. In the, I would say late teens, early 20s is where you experience it the most. And that's where you're so anxious, so caught up that you just pinpoint all of your energy. And the only way it gets released is through moving an object in your home or causing a door to slam. And if you don't know you have psychic abilities on top of having emotional issues or, I just overall anxiety, that can transform into a manifestation of outward activity, which they often called as poltergeist.
Okay. All right. So we talked about demons. Are there other non-human things that you've come across while you're investigating?
Not that I've come across, but of course you have the cryptozoology, which would be Bigfoot, the Chupacabra, and all of those entities. Then you have, there's a tie and a lot of research going on, and I'm hoping we can get involved in it soon because I'm looking forward to this one, is there's a tie between UFO activity possibly being related to spirit activity. So are the spirits we're seeing actually UFO entities or aliens? Or when are aliens attracted to spiritual activity? So there's a whole bunch of different investigations going on regarding that right now.
Yeah.
Then you also have the like the fairies and and all of those elementals. That's the word I'm looking for.
Elementals.
You have those that are out there as well.
Elementals. Okay. All right. That's that's a lot. And honestly, I think that being open-minded about paranormal and investigation and paranormal activity would have to have people, you have to realize it's not always paranormal, right? It's not always paranormal. Sometimes it's just some other natural reason that these things are happening. And that, that's got to be hard for people to deal with, especially if they're manifesting the energies themselves.
Right. So, and that was the hardest thing. I had a client just before I left Vegas, and she swore she was experiencing activity. And that's the hardest thing, because when we also do investigations, we also, and we're not saying that it can't be paranormal activity because you have mental issues or psychiatric issues, but we do request for the safety of our clients that they do get a medical workup and a psychiatric workup, just so we know, A, they're healthy, B, the medications they're on aren't triggering the activity, right, or what they're going through isn't attracting the activity. But the medications this poor woman was on also caused tactile hallucinations, which is feeling like something's touching you all the time. And she kept saying, we investigated, or people I knew went and investigated, because I couldn't go because I had been exposed to COVID at the time and was under quarantine. They investigated. They didn't get anything. I went in several weeks later just to talk to her and to get some more answers and questions figured out, and nothing happened while we were there. But she kept saying that they were always touching her. They were always touching her, and she just her pain was real,
Yeah,
but it was
absolutely.
definitely nothing paranormal.
Wow,
And that's the hardest thing, is to tell someone that it's not paranormal when they're truly suffering. And in their mind, it being paranormal gives them a reason for what they're experiencing, because a lot of people would rather hear you have a ghost bothering you than you're sick.
Well, yeah, I mean, nobody wants to feel like that they are manufacturing events in their minds, you know?
Right.
I mean, that's unsettling and upsetting, I'm sure.
Mhm.
So, all right. Well, let's talk about the most haunted location you've ever been to. What would you say that is?
Oh, wow. Well, definitely Gettysburg would be one of them.
Mhm.
And then the next closest one, I would have to say, just if you go by paranormal activity based on square footage, I would have to
Okay.
say the Florence mine up in Goldfield.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I wasn't expecting you to say that.
Oh.
I was gonna that's amazing. Really? So what kind of experiences have you had, at the mine?
Um, get the book. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. No, we are gonna get
No,
the book. Everybody
no,
buy the book for sure when it comes out.
I'm just kidding. I don't mind talking about it. But
Okay.
we were invited up there, myself and the other investigator that I was talking about earlier, and we basically, a TV producer wanted to film a pilot. So, and that was my first time ever going up to Gettysburg, and it was a blast. We went there, and upon arrival, you could already see spirits in sheds, almost like they were curious as to who's all this pulling up, because it was us and the production crew. And then you had the mine owner that was there. Then we went into what was the mill house. And inside this mill house, John Ulrich has done an amazing job restoring it. It had old newspapers. It had a pair of glasses from the late 1800s. It had workers' notices still on the bulletin board from the late 1800s. He's just kept everything as is, and it's just amazing there. But inside that one building, we had everything from being touched to hearing voices to seeing light anomalies. And I'm not talking about just little orbs that could be dust or bugs. We were seeing lights going from side by side in the room with our bare eyes. Um, I heard a full conversation of men talking, almost like they were giving instructions for work.
Wow. Oh, so you had actual auditory.
Yeah, we had everything in just that one
Wow.
little building. And then in the building across the way, the mill house, or not the mill house, the hoist house is where we had the first experience. Then the mill house, we were walking around, and we, again, footsteps, voices. The one thing we saw is we were seeing a man crouched down in the rafters up ahead, a full
Wow.
apparition of him, crouched down in the rafters ahead. And then when we looked up to see who it was in the rafters, we also noticed a noose was hanging from the rafters. And the
Whoa.
owner was like, "We didn't put that there." So they have no idea how that got there. So you had the news, whether it's true or not. I like to believe my clients when they tell me that, but
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's no way of actually knowing
right,
if they put it
especially
there
since
or
they
not.
knew the TV crew was coming in to film, so who knows.
Right, right.
But then we went into a mine shaft that had collapsed, and inside the shaft, we were getting strange sounds. And I decided I was going to walk back to where the actual collapse had occurred. And in this shaft, we only had a small area where there was about 3 of us that could stand up, but then the rest of the crew was squatted down, and you had to climb in and out. And so I climbed further back to where the collapsing area was, and I had everything from, they had to pull me out. I was so overwhelmed with emotion. I was crying. I felt like I was being crushed. I was hearing screaming.
Oh my
It,
God.
it was just, I was living the moment when that mine had collapsed and killed all the men that were in there.
Did you need therapy afterwards? Because that
No,
sounds super dramatic. Oh my God.
but they pulled me out. I was like 2 feet away from the area, perfectly fine, like nothing happened. And I was like,
Wow. It
crap.
was like a switch. The energy cut off and that was it.
Exactly, that's what it was like. And I
Wow.
mean, and that wasn't even just, that was just the first 4 hours we were at the mine that all this happened. Then we stayed the evening in the mine owner's home. He invited us to spend the night because we had more filming to do the next day. And while we were there, the other investigator, he got up and he had said to the mine owner, he's like, do you know someone who looks, it was like a weird beard and or a mustache and has this type of look? And he's like, you mean this guy? And he pulled a photo off the wall, and it was the former owner of the mine. And he had seen him and another lady who he described to the owner, and it was his wife that he had actually physically seen.
That's awesome.
Right. We were so sitting there, and all of a sudden we smelled what at first I thought it smelled like roses, but then it developed into smelling like something was on fire in the house. And if anyone knows Goldfield history, Goldfield caught on fire twice. Plus the Florence mine had 2 major fires that destroyed a majority of the area. And so it was weird that we were walking around trying to figure out where the smell was coming from, and there was no source. Wow. So then that night while sleeping, about 4 a.m, I was woken up from a dead sleep to someone yelling in my ear. I didn't start the fire. I jumped up, the other investigator still sound asleep, and the mine owner's kids were, camped out in the living room with us, and they were still sound asleep. If someone had been standing there screaming, you'd think the other people would be woken up too.
Yeah, I would imagine.
No one else woke up. So I was like, holy crap.
Wow. And this is all in your book? This is like this whole, wow.
Yeah. And then the other investigator, he actually went further into a different mine shaft. And when he came out, he was fully exhausted. He said it felt like something came right through him and just wanted to take over.
Holy cow. That's crazy. So, now I got to go up there. I want to check it out.
If you want to, I can get you in contact. We were the first paranormal team in there, and I don't know if he's invited any more in, just because that really wasn't his thing. He just did it for the filming. But his son, who he's Aiden's age, so he's about 18. He offers tours of the mine.
Okay.
So they offer daytime tours.
Maybe if you come back to Vegas, we can organize Witches Paranormal Society investigation up there, because that would be fun.
Right. Well, definitely. I am working. I need to get in contact with John a little bit more, but my publisher wants me to set up an event and a book signing at the mine, since the mine was featured. The mine actually has its own chapter.
Okay.
So.
All right. Very, very cool. So I'm going to say that was a pretty memorable experience for you.
Yeah. And that was just like 1.5 days, because we got there late in the afternoon and then we left just before dinner the next day. So just over 24 hours. Wow.
That is really, I can't wait to read your book, because that was just, that little piece was so interesting. I'm super excited to grab that copy of that when it comes out. So let's say somebody needs help from you. Somebody has something going on. How do you vet those people? What is the process that would go into having you go in and investigate?
Well, basically, I've, of course, adopted the Warren Foundation's method of doing it, but it was pretty much similar to what I was already doing and what most teams do anyway, is we have a Google form that the person needing help fills out. And basically it starts off with, your name, your age, who lives in your house, does everybody get along, who's experiencing the activity, what activity is happening, and they fill all that out. And then from there, we set up an interview to talk one-on-one. And because they're all over the world, we pretty much do it kind of like what we're doing right here. We'll set up either a Zoom or a Skype, or I've even used StreamYard to record it. And we conduct a one-on-one, and we do record it because we're a research foundation. And you also want to have that to go back to. So if someone says something during an investigation and you didn't take good notes during the interview, you can go back to the video recording. And during that, we ask more in-depth questions, such as what type of activity are you experiencing? Have you experienced sounds of broken glass? And there's probably about 30 or 40 questions related to the activity. And then we do, I don't really want to say a deep dive, but we do dive into their medical and psychological history, asking questions such as, do you have any medical conditions right now? What medications are you taking? And we go along the lines of that, just so we can make sure that we can rule out anything health-wise that could be causing the activity.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. And then sometimes what I do is I'll do a second interview just to see if the stories have changed between the first and the second.
Is that a red flag if the story changes?
Yeah. And that's when, if the story does change, I'll do a third interview And it takes several months before I actually will go to someone's home and investigate. And that's not just for that, it's also for safety, because essentially you're going into a stranger's home, and I want to make sure I know them before I step foot in their door.
Probably a good idea.
So talking with them more often kind of gives you that better idea. And it's just tough, because the other thing too is I've had people who their stories sounded so well rehearsed that it's hard to determine, is it well rehearsed just because they talk about it or they experienced it, or is it well rehearsed because they practiced before we called them?
Huh.
So it's a tough call.
Yeah. So I guess your intuition's got to play a little bit of a part in that as well.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the more you pick up on the little things. And we also, like when we do the interviews, we try to have at least, 2 or 3 other investigators on with us. And I would still be the lead investigator conducting the interview, but the other investigators would be there watching for, facial expressions, and actually listening to their answers while I focus on conducting the interview.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. And you guys can bounce it off each other and,
Yeah.
see if you're coming to the same conclusions or not. Yeah, that's great. All right. And how about for people out there that are looking for somebody to do an investigation for them? What kind of questions should they be asking an investigation team?
You want to, first of all, make sure that they have experience. Ask them about some of the cases they've handled. And of course, we keep everything confidential, but it doesn't stop us from explaining to you how a past case has gone. Just like I talked about the one client, nobody knows who she is because I didn't give any
Right.
personal details. So there's nothing wrong with talking to a client about that, or even asking a paranormal team, hey, what type of cases have you handled? You also want to find out their investigation process. Are they going to come into your home? Do they have a confidentiality form that you'll sign and they'll sign to make sure they don't share the information with anyone else? You also want to make sure that any reputable team out there is going to have paperwork. And that's mostly to cover our butts and our clients' butts. It's paperwork, release and liability forms. Most paranormal teams do have insurance. So you want to make sure that, they have insurance if they're coming into your home, just in case anything happens to their team members. It's not coming out of your insurance policy, it's coming out of theirs. And just, you kind of want to get to, just like I like to get to know the client, you want to get to know the investigator before you have them come into your home.
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot because paranormal investigation is huge right now. I mean,
Yep.
there's 10 million TV shows, YouTube channels, teams on Facebook. Everybody is super into this. And I can't imagine that all of them have the same credentials or even ethics. Not to say I don't, nobody in specific, but I think you've got to be careful, especially if you're having people come in your home.
Right. And that's our goal with the foundation, is we have a strict code of ethics that must be followed. And we've asked people to leave for not following it. And our goal is to train other investigators to follow this, even though they're not members of the foundation, to at least follow our code of ethics. And we want to come up with some type of certification or training program and have it known worldwide that if you call to get someone to investigate your home, the first question you ask is, are you Warren Legacy certified?
That's great. Yeah.
So
is that the only? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and then that guarantees that they follow our code of ethics if we've certified them.
Right. So is that the only organization in the United States, or are there other organizations that are equally as good?
Oh, I'm sure you have them all over the place, because like you have TAPS, which is from ghost hunters. They have a strict policy on following or becoming a member of TAPS. I don't know if it's changed recently because it's been so long since I've looked into it. But then you have the popularity of the TV show. So it all depends on how people view TV shows, because I know they can be good, but they people need to keep in mind that they're for entertainment. And, just because a name is tied to a TV show, I'm not saying that it's bad, but it doesn't mean that it's good either. And also do your research, because not everybody agrees with what the foundation. I mean, we have people who don't agree with what we do. and that's their choice. And
I mean, isn't that with everything though? I mean,
right.
with
Yep.
everything, you're gonna have, 10 people who say this and 20 people who say that, and they're gonna argue about it.
Right.
But
It's the paradrama is awful. And I do everything I can to just, withdraw myself from it. And that's what I liked about Chris and the foundation is when people try to pull him in or the foundation into the drama, he just shuts his mouth and lets them battle it out. It only
yeah,
goes to show their integrity if they're the ones going around saying nasty things and we don't say anything in response.
yeah, the witch wars are similar. So I got, yeah, and the pagan community too. I mean, like, witches, pagans. I think any group that you have, there's going to be people. I think humans are drama queens, all of
Yeah.
us.
No,
So
it's like when I studied for my PhD. My doctoral thesis was about we're humankind. We're all the same. Why is there so much bickering going on? I just don't get it.
yeah, I think it's human nature, us versus them,
Unfortunately.
tribal mentality.
Right.
My group's better than your group. How many wars are fought? My God's better than your God.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
I think this just,
territory.
yeah, it's just human nature. Unfortunately, and the same goes, I guess, for the ghost world.
Yeah.
So I do want to say something. I know, it, people on TV with paranormal shows, there's a lot of that. I think a lot of it is really good entertainment, but
Hmm.
I mean, how many of them do you think are really in it for they're really trying to bring people information, or it's not just for ratings?
I believe they start out that way because some of the older shows when they first started really had information that was good,
Right.
and they were truly there. You would see them actually going to clients' homes and not to these, popular haunted locations.
Right.
And to me, back then, and I still watch them just because I like getting the experiments. So, just kind of watching their experiments and seeing what they're doing to see if I could, do something similar or can adapt it to whatever, really works.
Right.
But even after filming the documentary we filmed, it is about entertainment. It's you can only go so far before you start losing people. So you kind of have to put in a few things here and there to make it entertaining to keep their interest. But I also do feel several of the TV shows out there have crossed the line when it comes to ethics. I mean, they fake evidence, they lie, they
Really?
steal evidence from local paranormal teams. It's amazing what's out there.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, I guess, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of sponsorship dollars there for people. I mean,
Yep.
and money talks in our world, let's be honest.
Yep,
So,
there is, and I do know a couple new shows that are coming out. I don't even have a lot of the details, but I know Brandon Elvis and Mustafa from the second launch of Ghost Hunters. I know when I talked to Brandon on my show, he had said that he's launching a new TV series that is going to change how paranormal TV is viewed
oh, that's
because
exciting.
because
That's
he's
exciting.
tired of the faking the activity and all of that. So
Well,
he's taking a
yeah.
different approach.
I mean, and there's a lot of people who don't know that it's entertainment. They really think that this is real
Hmm.
because
Yep.
it's reality TV, right? But I mean, none of reality TV is really real, right? I mean, let's it's it's all scripted, a lot of it. But I do think that some of the things maybe they're embellished and they're actual things that have happened though, right?
Hmm. Right. Yeah,
So,
it's hit or miss though, because you also got to keep in mind that when they go, I mean, the show an hour long, ad commercials, maybe 40 minutes long. They're probably at the location for a week or two
okay.
to
So
get the
they're
little bit of stuff that they put into that 40 minutes,
well, yeah. I mean,
and that's probably
things
all
are
they got.
edited. Yeah, and that was it, huh?
Mhm.
All right. So if somebody has an investigation done, how long should it take? How long is a typical investigation?
Depends on the activity and the size of the location and where the activity is happening. I mean, we've done um, large museums that take, all night. We start at 6 p.m. and we're there till 2, 3 in the morning. We've done residential investigations where we start at 9 o'clock and we're done by 11. It
Right.
just depends on the size and also how many investigators you have with you. If you guys can break up and go to different areas to get everything done. But you want to make sure that they're thorough.
Right.
And you also want to make sure that they don't drag it out. So I know it takes us a while to go from the original information to the actual investigation, but once the investigation's done, ask them how long it's going to take them to review the evidence and get back to you, and hold them to it. It should not take more than 1 week. If they're truly dedicated, I know we have lives, we have jobs, but if they're truly dedicated, they're going to sit down after work every night going through the evidence.
Okay.
And it's not going to take them. And if they're not done in a week or two, at least they're going to let you know, hey, we're not quite done. We can show you what we have, or can you wait 1 more week? It's one of those things where you want to have communication with them. And, I've seen investigations and we hear from clients all the time. The team came into the investigation and then disappeared.
Wow.
Or it took months to get, our information back. And,
So if you're gathering information, what's the goal of the investigation? The real goal of a paranormal investigator should be
to prove that it's not paranormal.
Okay.
First.
Right.
And then to create reports and document this. But you need to make sure that it's to not cause fear in your client. And the longer you wait to get back to them, or the longer an investigation takes, it's one of those things where they start worrying.
Right. They start thinking like something's wrong, or something is worse than it probably is. Right.
Yeah. Because even if it takes us, hours or months before we actually do the investigation from the time we make contact with the client, I'm still in contact with them every week. Even if it's a simple text message, hey, how's it going? Just wanted to check in. I have a CRM that I have all my contacts in, and it tells me, on Friday at this time, you need to contact this person. And it gives me a list of everybody, their phone numbers, their emails. And I just sit in front of the computer one afternoon and I go through the list. Hey, how's it going? Just thought I'd check in.
There you go.
And it takes
Organized.
me maybe, some days are longer than, or some weeks are longer than others because I have more cases. But as cases close and cases open up, it could get, less.
Right. So somebody has asked, how much do you charge to do an investigation?
Nothing.
It's free.
Yep. 100% free.
Supposed to be free, right?
Yes. It's supposed to be free.
Yeah.
We, and that's the one thing that I also want to teach people. And I talk about, like, we did a show just last week on ethics. And the paranormal field, it's one of those things where it's so hard to prove activities there and activities not there. So, it's best not to charge just for that reason. They're doing us a service by letting us come into their home and, conducting more research, collecting evidence, experience, more experiences for us, more, education for us. And also it's one of those things where there's so many other ways in this field to make money, and people just don't understand that.
Right.
It's, you're a nonprofit organization, set your team up as a nonprofit. Then if someone wants to make a donation, have it on your website to where they can do so. And then 100% of what comes in as a donation gets used for transportation. Do what I'm doing. I write books. I'm going to be teaching classes. I'm doing lectures. I'm going to be going on a lecture series hopefully next year. And I'm also working with Flumery Promotions. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but he's also the guy who runs all of the events that Brandon Mustafa, Daryl Marston, and Chelsea Gill and all of those guys, he does their events and he's their manager. He's also the manager of the Warren Files.
There you go.
And so he's, we get appearance fees plus, our transportation to and from these events. So there's so many ways that if you want this as a career, it's possible without charging clients.
Right. Now, have you ever heard of teams charging clients?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Some teams will charge clients standard fees. Others will charge for transportation to get there and back. But I'm sorry, if you can't afford to get to a client, find a team that's closer. It is my thing. If you're driving 5 hours and can't afford the gas to get there and back on your own, find someone local that can help them. You don't need to be charging the client a couple $100s for your gas and hotel.
Right.
you can also, several people have charged to cleanse homes. And I just, it's like, well, if we're going to cleanse it, then it's like, $150. No, just, I go in and I cleanse the home if they want, and then I teach the client how to cleanse the home, because that's an upkeep that you have to do.
Right. Right. And you said earlier, if the spirit doesn't want to leave, it's not going to leave anyway, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because we helped that one client and the spirit didn't want to go. And I cleansed the house, and that's when I was attacked. And, he didn't want to go. And she ended up selling the house and moving.
So do you think that, the exchange of coin sullies the investigative accuracy, or the whole, like if you're supposed to be investigating to either prove or disprove paranormal phenomena, right? So this is something that is like, you're a researcher. So does the research get skewed if somebody is taking money for it?
I don't know if the money causes that to happen, but I do feel that if you're in it for the money and you're charging, you're not in it for the right reasons to begin with. And that skews your overall research anyway.
Gotcha.
Because you're not in it for the right reasons, which is to help people.
Right. And honestly, I mean, isn't the main goal of a researcher to actually find tangible evidence of paranormal phenomena? That's what I would think what the actual goal of all of this is to prove life after death, or that these energies do exist, and get real evidence to prove that scientifically. That's what I would imagine this whole, I'm not like hobbyists or whatever, but I mean, people who are really like in it for the right reasons. I would, if I was going to like really dive into this, that would be my reason. I would want to be able to like really tangibly prove one way or the other, because with a lot of the metaphysical practices, it's very hard to prove any of it. Unless, I mean, I do readings, so I will tell people things, it will happen. But, sometimes they'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe you were totally right. Right. And I'm like, all right, so that's proof. But is that proof? I don't know. Is that proof?
Right. And it's so tough because, I want to use the scientific method in this field.
Yeah.
And it's possible to adapt the scientific method to the field, but you can't follow the true format of the method, because the experiment can't be repeated.
Right.
Because the ghost can make its own decision if it wants, okay, it might have knocked this time, but it's not going to knock the next time you do it. So does that mean there's no ghost there, or there's no afterlife, or did just the ghost didn't want to participate? So it's so hard to follow the exact method. But that's what I want to adapt and try to make happen.
Right.
Because that's what we're here for. We want to get the answers. And the only way to get the answers is to create hypothesis, experiment, repeat, adjust and repeat, and keep going.
Right. But, I think that there's so many variables involved with any kind of paranormal activity, right? That those variables would make it pretty difficult to get the same exact situation every time. And then how could you do that? How could you use the scientific method? Right. I mean, how is it possible to do it that way?
It is possible in the aspect of, you have your hypothesis. So like one experiment that I always tell people to do when they're experimenting, and this works if you have the Eddie Plus, is to pick one location, and for 30 days, it can be 30 days, a year, however long you want it to be, but pick one location. Like my example would be setting it on your patio table, but you want to make sure that the patio table is in the same location, and you set the Eddie Plus in the same location every night. And then document the moon phase. And moon phase and temperature. And then over the course of 30 days, you collect data, and are EMFs higher because temperatures are higher, or are they higher because of the full moon? So, and you document that for 30 days. Then, you can document it again for another 30 days and then compare. Okay. And that's similar to how you would do the field, is from that point in time, if EMFs are higher on a full moon, try to reach out to a spirit in the same area. If you're able to reach a spirit in the same area on the full moon, but not the new moon, then it could be related to the high EMFs. and then repeat that experiment. And it's one of those things where it's more or less you have to repeat the experiment, let's say 10 times. And if you have results 3 of the times, 30% is pretty good in the field.
Yeah. All right. And do you bring mediums with you when you do these investigations?
I
And are
never,
you
go ahead.
and if you did or you do you try to validate whatever they're saying? Sorry.
I've never brought them with, but I know the foundation, we do have a lot of mediums, and I've actually consulted with a lot of mediums on different cases. And it's one of those things where they go in blind. They know nothing about the site. We also don't let our mediums, unless it's a dangerous situation, they pretty much just write down what they're experiencing. And then, because you don't want to put fear in the client. And then they consult with the team lead before actually telling the client. But we compare what the medium experiences, sees, hears, or anything, and we compare that to the actual investigation. Okay. So if you experienced, a voice at this time, or you saw someone at this time, we compare it to the investigation, and okay, there was a, EVP on the voice recorder at the same time. And it's kind of like you want to keep both investigations separately, but then compare at the end and see what happens.
Okay. That's good. And then I obviously, if a medium actually comes up with a name, or somebody associated with the property, and you can actually go back and verify that information, that would add credibility to it as well.
Yeah, 100%, which is why we always, I know I like to go in fully researched, but that's because I want to know what questions to ask.
Gotcha.
I want to know, hey, like the place used to be a factory. Did you used to work at the factory? I want to know questions to ask by knowing the history of the property. And a lot of people want to go in blind, especially mediums, and it should be that way because you don't want to skew their, or it's like you don't want to Google up their mind.
Right. No, I think that if you're going into something like that and you are going in as a psychic or a medium, you should have no knowledge of what's there.
Right.
Because
and I even go as far as I tell other people that the best way to do it is if you have a psychic on your team, don't let them drive to the investigation. Pick them up, because then that way they don't have the address.
There you go. There you go. See, there's good ways to keep everything legit, and keep everything on target. And you don't want to think that somebody's going to be dishonest, but you never know. You never know. You never know.
All over the place.
Yeah. So, all right. So if anybody is interested in learning more about paranormal investigation, or they want to, maybe get into the field in some way, can you make any recommendations on books, classes, people they should reach out to? What can you give them along those lines?
Well, of course, the Warren Foundation. We host a weekly Warren or every other week Warren's Files, and we just launched a teachable platform that we're going to be hosting classes on that deal with demonology and a few other things. I just posted a herbal bath class for paranormal researchers. That's a free class, but I know Chris has a whole bunch of other classes that he wants to do that with. Reach out to the foundation. We can put you in contact with Chris. You could also reach out to me anytime. I wake up every morning to 100 messages, but I eventually get through them all. So it may take me a while, but I do get through them all. Brandon Elvis from Ghost Hunters is a good resource, but I know he's extremely busy. You could reach out to the Rhine Institute, which does a lot on psychic abilities. And Lloyd Arbach is one of their head teachers there. He's a great guy and very open to talk about it. I'm trying to think of... I think it's called the Center for Paranormal Research, and it's in Virginia. They focus more on a scientific aspect of investigations.
Okay.
So they take more scientific approach to what they do. And in fact, I know they don't conduct investigations like normal. They're more into it of, we did this and we got a reaction, and they don't care what the reaction was. They just want to know that they had a reaction type of thing.
Okay.
So they're more on the scientific end. And there is a whole bunch of different, as far as books, I know Mike Ricksecker, he has a lot of great books. He he was in the Alaska Triangle documentary or the TV show on Travel Channel. And then he wrote several books on the Alaska Triangle, as well as Shadow People. It's called A Walk in the
Wow.
Shadows. He's really good. Trying to think. Oh, the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Research is run by a friend of mine, Larry Lawson, who's a former sheriff. Sheriff's detective down here in Indian River County, Florida. He has that one, as well as the International Bureau of Paranormal Research, which I help him with and I'm a member of. They're all over the place. Trying to remember all their names is and the Institute of Metaphysical and Humanistic Studies is run by Dr. Kelly, who also runs Thomas Francis University, and that is where I actually got my education from.
Okay. And what about a great book?
Haunted Nevada. No. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. Plug that book.
Yeah, it's going to be Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns. They've changed the title on me a couple times, but I believe that's what they've settled on. Elements of a Haunting by Brandon Alvis is really good. And then I do have, I wish I could remember the names of them, but I can get them from you. That was the name. Let me check. There's a place down here in Florida. The Meta, Mehta. He wrote a series of books. And he's based here in Florida. And I'll have to get you that link when I can find it. But he has a metaphysical location here in Orlando.
Oh, okay.
They do meditation and ghost stories and all of, ghost training and all of that too. His books are really good about your inner abilities and self-manifestation and how a lot of the paranormal activity could be from us.
All right. Oh, that's an interesting study, I'm sure, to see how much we are affecting the reality around us. I think a lot of us would be astounded by that.
Yeah,
for sure.
We have more of an effect than we want to believe.
Right. So you can find Dr. Heather Leigh at Dr. Heather Leigh on Facebook, right? And at Exploration Paranormal and explorationparanormal.com. These are all places that you can find more information about Heather Leigh-Landon. And she is a great guest. And thank you so much for being here. If you have not followed our Facebook page at Touch of Magick Show, please do. And also you could subscribe on YouTube if you have not already, youtube.com/Touch of Magick. And it's magic with a K, Magick, just so you know. All right. So thank you so much for being here, Heather. This was great. Touch of Magick will be back, of course, anytime. So we'll be back on Sunday, April 17th at 5:00 Pacific Daylight Time. And on Sunday, we're going to have Fred Lee, and we're going to be talking about spiritualism and spirit communication with him. And that's going to be a great conversation. I'm excited about that one too. So until then, remember to be the magic, because you are the magic, and that's a fact. And I'll catch you next time. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye, everybody.